Have you ever stopped to listen to that uncomfortable truth you've been avoiding for so long? That quiet, persistent feeling that lingers in the background of your thoughts, waiting for your attention, even though you do everything you can to ignore it. It doesn't scream, it doesn't fight for your attention, but it's always there, and it often takes the shape of rejection. Rejection, the thing you fear, the thing you try to escape at all costs, isn't your enemy. In fact, it may be your most powerful ally. This isn't some attempt to romanticize pain or reframe rejection as something soft. No, rejection wounds you. It burns, it tears, it shakes your self-worth, but it also has the potential to awaken something within you that you thought was lost forever. Why does rejection hurt so much? Because it's not really about the other person. It's about you. About the things you suppress, about the needs you deny, about the unresolved shadows that live inside you. When someone turns you away, it doesn't simply bruise your pride. It exposes the parts of yourself you haven't yet accepted. It's a mirror reflecting the stories you still carry about not being enough. Think about it. What part of you gets triggered when you're rejected? What old wound reopens? What fear shows up, uninvited but familiar, when someone says no? Rejection isn't random. It shows up precisely when it needs to. When you're ready to grow. When it's time to see clearly. It arrives like a painful teacher, not to break you, but to strip away everything false. Maybe you're remembering a recent moment right now, the last time you were rejected. You can still feel it, the sting, the disappointment, the sense of something inside you breaking apart again. But let me ask you something. What if rejection was the best thing that could have happened? What if it didn't destroy you, but instead initiated you into a version of yourself that no longer needs to beg for acceptance? Every time you look outside of yourself for validation, you become fragile. You become dependent. You hand over your power to opinions you cannot control. And in doing so, you disconnect from your essence. You dilute your presence. You lose the thing that actually makes you magnetic. True attraction doesn't come from being liked. It comes from being whole, from no longer needing to be chosen in order to feel valuable. When you stop trying to be accepted by everyone, you begin to radiate a quiet confidence that others feel, even if they can't explain it. The world senses when you no longer need its approval, and that's when your real power begins to rise. Because here's one of the hardest truths to accept. The more you chase someone's attention, the more likely they are to pull away. Why? Because the human mind instinctively recoils from neediness. You could have the purest heart and the best intentions, but if your energy screams, "I need you to approve of me," what you'll emit, without meaning to, is pressure. And pressure repels. This is why detachment is power, not because it makes you cold or indifferent, but because it reveals a deeper truth. You are always enough. You never needed to convince anyone to see your value. The question is, how do you reach that level of inner self-sufficiency? The answer is as difficult as it is liberating. You have to face your shadow. You have to turn toward the parts of yourself you've hidden, repressed, or denied. The insecurities, the shame, the fear of not being wanted. Jung called this process individuation, the integration of all your broken, scattered pieces into a whole, conscious self. And only through that integration can you finally stop needing the world's approval to feel worthy. Once you begin that journey, you realize something extraordinary. No one has the power to reject you, except you. Every time you betrayed your values for approval, every time you molded yourself into what you thought others wanted, you weren't rejected for who you really were. You were rejected for who you pretended to be. That's the irony. We're not hurt by being seen. We're hurt by hiding. The more you try to become what others expect, the more you abandon your truth. And when the rejection inevitably comes, it's not a rejection of your real self. It's a rejection of the mask, which means the pain you feel is not failure. It's guidance, a reminder that the version of you that seeks approval is not the version of you that is truly free. The real magnetism people sense isn't manipulation. It's not reverse psychology. It's the energy of someone who has stopped needing validation, someone who has chosen themselves completely, unapologetically, and without delay. We live in a world overflowing with people who are desperate to be liked, who bend, twist, and mold themselves to fit in. But very few dare to stand firm in who they truly are. If you want to be different, stop asking for permission. Walk your path even if no one understands, especially then. That's where personal power lives, in silence, in solitude, in the willingness to be alone, not out of weakness, but out of strength. That kind of solitude sends a signal. People feel it, even if they don't know why. And that's real attraction. That's the kind that doesn't depend on effort or games. It's not built on needing to be chosen. It's built on finally choosing yourself. You see, the world doesn't chase those who are chasing. It moves toward those who stand still in their truth, those who have stopped begging to be noticed and started living as if they've already arrived. But to live this way, to embody this quiet power, you must stop running from the very thing that shaped you, rejection. Most people spend their lives terrified of hearing no. They avoid it, hide from it, build their lives around preventing it. But here's the real danger. The worst rejection you'll ever experience isn't the one that comes from others, it's the one you direct at yourself. Think about it. How many times have you silenced your own desires just to fit in? How often have you ignored what you really wanted to say, to do, to feel, just to be accepted? And even after all that self-betrayal, the approval you crave never came. Or worse, it came, but it felt hollow, because it wasn't meant for you. It was meant for the version of you you created to please them, and still, you were rejected. Not because you were too much, not because you weren't enough, but because you stopped being you. Here lies the great misunderstanding. We think rejection is a threat to our worth. In truth, it's the compass that points us back to it. Every no is a mirror. Every dismissal is a call. Rejection doesn't lie, it reveals. It shows you exactly where you're still afraid, where you're still fragmented, where your wounds still run the show. So instead of running from it, what if you leaned into it? What if you listened, really listened, to what each rejection had to teach you? What part of you still believes you're not worthy unless you're chosen? What story are you still living that says you must earn love by abandoning yourself? Because that's the core wound, the belief that you must become something else to be loved. And healing doesn't come from convincing others to approve of you. It comes from no longer needing their approval in the first place. This is the work of the shadow, the hidden self, the rejected self, the parts of you that you tried to bury under perfection, charm, success, or silence. But the shadow doesn't disappear. It waits, it watches, it shapes your choices, it guides your patterns. It creates the very situations you say you want to avoid until you finally pay attention. That's why your relationships repeat. That's why the same disappointments keep finding you. Not because you're cursed, but because your soul is sending messages. And rejection is the language it's using. So what would happen if just once you stopped seeing rejection as punishment and started seeing it as instruction? If you stopped asking, why did they leave me? And started asking, what part of me did I abandon long before they did? That's where power begins. When you stop fearing rejection, it loses its control over you. When you stop rejecting yourself, no one else can hurt you the way you used to hurt yourself. This isn't about becoming numb. It's about becoming real, honest, whole. You begin to act from truth rather than strategy. You stop trying to be what others want and start becoming what you need. That's when you stop performing and start living, and something remarkable happens. The world starts to mirror your strength. Not because you forced it to, but because you no longer needed it to. There comes a moment in your journey, if you're paying close attention, when you stop asking why you were rejected and start asking why you ever needed acceptance in the first place. This moment doesn't come easily. It arrives only after the illusion collapses, after you've tried everything, pleasing, performing, pretending, and still found yourself empty, misunderstood, or alone. It comes when the pain of being rejected by others becomes smaller than the pain of continuously abandoning yourself. That's when something powerful begins to shift. You no longer see rejection as something that breaks you. You see it as something that reveals you, and suddenly, you're no longer desperate to be accepted. You're desperate to be honest. Because the truth is, you've lived too long trying to earn a seat at someone else's table when your soul was begging you to build your own. This is where real self-respect begins, not with applause, but with silence, with the realization that no amount of validation will ever compensate for the absence of inner alignment. When you are disconnected from yourself, no praise will feel real, no love will feel safe, no success will feel fulfilling. Rejection, then, becomes a strange kind of grace. It forces you inward. It strips away the noise. It burns through illusion until only truth remains. And that truth is this: you were never meant to be everything to everyone. You were meant to become everything to yourself. When you internalize this, everything changes. Not all at once, but deeply and permanently. You start speaking with more clarity. Not because you want to impress, but because you're done hiding. You begin to walk into rooms without shrinking or posturing. You stop editing your presence to make others comfortable. You no longer apologize for your intensity, your ambition, your softness, your silence. You stop shrinking into smaller versions of yourself just to be palatable, and that's when the world starts reacting differently, because confidence is not loud. It's not ego. It's not dominance. True confidence is stillness. It's the quiet, calm of someone who doesn't need to prove anything. The grounded presence of someone who has nothing to defend and nothing to chase. This presence is rare, and it's magnetic. You stop chasing attention. You stop forcing connection. You stop twisting yourself into knots to be chosen. Because you've already chosen yourself. And in doing so, you've changed the game. You've stepped off the stage and into your real life. This is what most people misunderstand about attraction, especially the so-called rules of magnetism and power. It's not about being detached to manipulate. It's not about withholding to provoke interest. That's still a form of performance, still rooted in need. The real magic happens when you genuinely no longer require anything from anyone. When you've faced your own shadows so fully that you're no longer afraid to be alone. When your solitude is no longer a wound, but a sanctuary. That's when people start leaning in, not because you chase them, but because your presence speaks of something they forgot they were missing. Someone whole, someone honest, someone who does not need to be needed. But how do you get there? By doing the thing almost no one wants to do. You face the part of you that still believes you are not enough. You listen to the voice you've been avoiding, the one that whispers, "You're too much," or "You'll never be loved unless." You change. You don't argue with it, you don't numb it, you sit with it, you let it speak, and then you trace it back to where it was born. Maybe it came from a parent who only showed love when you achieved something. Maybe it came from a teacher who dismissed you. Maybe it came from an early relationship where your needs were labeled as weakness. Wherever it came from, it's not truth. It's programming, and the only way to release it is to confront it. This is shadow work. This is individuation. This is Jung's legacy. To become whole by integrating everything you've disowned, your fears, your longings, your contradictions, your raw, unmet needs, because only then can you stop reacting, stop projecting, stop creating the same cycles in your relationships. Only then can you stop blaming rejection and start learning from it. Rejection always brings clarity. It tells you with sharp precision where you're still seeking permission. It shows you who you still need to become. It asks you over and over again, will you finally choose yourself, even when no one else does? And the moment you answer, yes, not with your words, but with your actions, a portal opens. You begin to live from a different place. You stop waiting. You stop shrinking. You stop asking for space. You take up space, and you do it without anger, without arrogance, without apology. You're not trying to prove that you're enough. You simply know that you are, and that knowing is what changes everything. You realize that almost everything you were chasing in others was something you hadn't yet given to yourself. Attention, validation, affection, freedom. The people who rejected you were never rejecting you. They were rejecting the version of you that was still seeking something outside of your own being. But now, you stop outsourcing your worth. You bring it home. You become the source. And this, ironically, is what makes you magnetic. Not because you want to attract, but because you've stopped trying to. People feel the difference. They feel when you've released the need to be accepted. They may not understand it, but they respect it. It's rare, it's real, it's powerful, and more than that, it's yours. You've become someone who doesn't fear the closed door, because you've realized that not every door is meant to open. And sometimes the greatest peace is found when one closes and you finally see the truth it was hiding. You no longer see rejection as failure. You see it as redirection. A whisper from the universe saying, not here, keep going. There's something better. And eventually something even more powerful happens. You stop needing rejection to teach you because you're already listening. You've developed inner clarity. You've learned to read your own energy. You've stopped walking into spaces that don't align with your values. You no longer settle for crumbs, because you've remembered you were always the feast. And here's the final paradox. The less you need acceptance, the more freely it flows to you. The less you chase love, the more love seeks you. The less you fear rejection, the more you realize it never had power over you in the first place, because you finally understood the truth. No one can reject you more deeply than you already have, and no one can love you more powerfully than you're now willing to love yourself. So what happens now? You begin to attract relationships that reflect your integration, not ones based on need, but on resonance. Not ones that complete you, but that complement you. Not ones that demand your performance, but invite your presence. Because now you are no longer asking, do you see me? You are living in a way that says, I see myself. That's enough. So the next time someone rejects you, let it happen. Let them walk, let the door close, let the silence stretch out. But this time don't chase, don't beg, don't crumble. Instead, ask, what part of me was I still waiting for them to validate? What truth about myself am I now ready to embrace? Even if no one else does, that is the moment your power returns. That is when the wound becomes a portal. That is when rejection stops being a threat and becomes a guide. So here's the challenge. Don't run from rejection. Run toward it. Let it teach you. Let it burn away what is false. Let it reveal what is real, because what's real cannot be taken from you. And who you really are, once remembered, can never again be rejected. You are not here to be chosen. You are here to choose yourself every single day until it's no longer a decision, but a way of being. If this message spoke to something deep inside you, don't keep it to yourself. Subscribe to The Selves for more content like this, where we explore the truth behind your thoughts, your emotions, and your inner evolution. And before you go, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. What part of you are you finally ready to stop rejecting? Let's start a conversation that matters. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to wake up. See you in the next video.